Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? I wanted to kind of expand a little bit on what is arguably a very long series, disjointed series of videos, which I should probably put into one little playlist, maybe a long playlist, talking about character advancement in various systems, talking about like playing in the sweet spot, that sort of thing, taking it from a different angle, because I've thought about it a few different ways based on what some people have said, some things that I have kind of looked at recently. I did want to correct an egregious error from my last video. I was horrified when I saw it, but I took a look here at this little exercise I did with going from Philippe to D'Artagnan, and I realized I underestimated, or I looked at the wrong figure when I made the video. Actually require 349 XP in ubiquity to get from Philippe to D'Artagnan, not 106. I was looking at just a column for what it would have cost him to spend his money on his talents, which is like 70 sessions if you're getting like full XP every single time. So a long time. But that's a good place to start. Because here, I use examples from a few different games, like Lamentations of the Flame Princess, arguably one of my favorite, Ubiquity, in this case, All for One, but it really doesn't matter which Ubiquity game it is, and talk about a little bit about Broken Rooms and what have you. But you take a look at this, I'm not going to bore you to tears with all the numbers, you take a look at, what does D'Artagnan look like on paper versus Philippe. And D'Artagnan has higher ability scores. Now this, for every one increase, he's got ability scores of all 4. Philippe has 2s and 3s. So with the exception of, like, if there's a reflexive thing that one of them has to do, okay, that means a 2 die difference for every 1 point difference. Other things, it's only really adding 1 die to everything you do related to strength, related to dexterity, related to charisma. It can be a big deal, but if you look at how they perform, now the first thing I just kind of took a look at is like, how would they do in a fight together? And I got to tell you, your money's probably better spent on D'Artagnan, but only by a little bit. Now what gives, well, I mean, D'Artagnan, what he did was, and I think this is part of the shtick of Ubiquity, what the intelligence thing to do with Ubiquity, is you spend a lot of your experience becoming more of who you already are. And I think that, applies in a lot of games. And what I mean by that is this, D'Artagnan, they don't give you the starting stats for D'Artagnan, but D'Artagnan is a musketeer. He put a lot of experience into rank in the musketeers. He's got a rank of 4. He actually improved his lackey from being 0 to 2, so that requires quite a bit of experience as well. He took some talents that made him more D'Artagnan. He's got dodge, parry, Philippe has parry, skill aptitude, which is a +2 rating to his melee. So instead of putting more points in it, as Philippe has done. Well, actually, Philippe has put ranks in a fencing salon, which helps with fencing at that point. So it's just a different way to skin that cat. Vigorous defense, which is a talent that I'm actually looking at, which would make Philippe a little bit more Philippe with multiple attackers. He would be better at fighting against multiple attackers. That really doesn't help if they go head to head. Actually, if you look at it, I think at the end of the day, based on where I have Philippe right now, only spending about 30 or 40 experience, if that, and not a lot of them on his skills. It comes down to they probably be evenly matched. But D'Artagnan, through spending his experience, has become more D'Artagnan. He's got things where he spent a lot in performance and on streetwise. And D'Artagnan's a bit of a, he's a lot more of a ladies' man and, man about town than Philippe is. And Philippe has tended to put more of his points in something like the Renoir Fencing Academy, because that's what he's really into. He's into getting, rising up in that academy, and he just seems to be more loyal to that. So I'm making Philippe more like who Philippe is. D'Artagnan became more D'Artagnan over time. But in terms of, did he grow leaps and bounds over the original character that showed up? No. A little bit harder to kill. At the end of the day, he's got 8 health as opposed to Philippe's 5 health. So arguably he can take one more hit with a sword before it's really serious. That's about it. And that's spending an awful lot of experience. So the progression in Ubiquity can be really, really compressed. And generally what happens, it seems, is people go wide. And you add these talents, you add these resources that makes the character more like that character. Going back to the Han Solo example for 1 second, the Han Solo we see in A New Hope, and the Han Solo we finally see in Force Awakens. I can't remember the name of the movie. How about that? They're arguably about the same guy. He's older, he's wiser, he's got some more resources, probably got some more talents, but he's still he's become more Han Solo. But shooting match, I think the younger Han Solo might have kicked his butt. You never know. Anyhow, but I'm getting old too. Before I get into Lamentations of the Flame Princess, something like Broken Rooms. I made a series of videos on Broken Rooms. Great game, on one of the videos, really short, talked about it's called One Trick Pony, and the idea is not that Broken Rooms is a one trick pony. It's that that's kind of probably one of the better ways to go ahead and create a character. In that game, you spending your skill points, resources, creating a character. Part of the whole shtick of that game is you're developing these psychic, or psi or whatever they are. There's some bizarre, world-bending powers. You can put some points into making your character who they were before the event, and that's cool. But in terms of spending your experience after that, improving your character, it makes the most sense. It fits that genre the most to become better at that power, to be able to control it more, to be able to tap into whatever in the world causes you to have that power in the first place. And so you become more of who that person really is. But that, looks a little bit different than what Ubiquity does, because you literally go from almost zero to hero. In magic-y terms, you go from being this person that, can kind of do a few things that are, simple, but, definitely not simple for you or I, to somebody that can really bend reality quite a bit. That's a different kind of progression, but arguably you're becoming more who that character really is. Now, let's talk about one of my favorite games, and the game that Jason had mentioned, and I think it was just a private post. I think it was just like a long post that he wrote. Here's the thing: I love this game. I love, I grew up with the old, versions of D&D. I love the old basic D&D, the really, really simple ones, and you could, lump Swords and Wizardry and all those clones into it. I happen to like this one the best, but you've got this conundrum that I've talked about before. Love playing in the sweet spot. I like the idea. I made that video. Maybe it's okay to start a character at something like 3rd or 4th level, because that's really where the game starts to get interesting. That's the character, that is a little bit more. They're not head and shoulders above everybody else, but they certainly have started to come into their own, and they're kind of equal to that concept you would see in fiction, one way or the other. But then once they become too overpowerful, then it's not as fun anymore, or at least it's not as fun anymore for me. So Jason talked about that idea of maybe just cramming that progression down, even in something like 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, which I don't want to play. Nothing against it, just it's not the game for me. But the idea, okay, let's play in this real area right here where it's pretty it's pretty fun, and not worry so much about progressing, which. Arguably, I've had a lot of fun in games. Yeah, sure, it's fun to gain a level, get more progression, but the most fun I've had in the games is where we're just being our characters. So looking at, this game, what happens in this game too, what actually really improves? Well, it depends on what your class is. If you're a magic user or a wizard, well, you get more magic, or a cleric rather. You get this, you're able to cast more magic. It gets more powerful over time, depending on what alternate system you might use. If you're a specialist, then you get better at your skills over time. You become, arguably, more of who your character already really is. Or you can go a little lateral and get a little better at some of the other ones related to that. You can pretty much tailor-make your character in this game, which is really cool. You can invent some skills as well. And if you're a fighter, that's the obvious one where the guy becomes better at combat. And really, he just becomes 5% better at hitting people each time. That's about all of his shtick, What else improves? Everything else that improves with these characters is entirely defensive, and it's what I would kind of lump into luck, or your ability to stay alive a little bit longer. And just like Tim Kask said in one of his videos, and I've mentioned this a bunch of times, hit points, what do they really represent? Or to me, what do they represent? Your ability to not get hurt for a little longer. And as you're having your luck and your mojo and everything worn down, you're not really getting hurt. Saving throws, they also represent your ability to kind of avoid damage. So in either one of those cases, that increase in hit points in those characters, the increase in saving throws proficiency, that represents your ability to kind of get out of the way. What makes that less satisfying for a lot of people is the idea that, hey, there's that one lucky sniper shot can't kill you. And on the flip side, something like Ubiquity, what occasionally makes me a little bit, what's one of the things that's less satisfying is the defensive prowess of the characters don't go up. So there's not really a mechanic that represents the fact that over time, I can buy talent, I can buy vigorous defense and what have you, but over time, some of these people that are used to getting into fisticuffs, if that's what they do, if that's their shtick, get a little bit better at rolling with the punches. The mechanic doesn't exist as much in that game. So where's the happy medium? And here comes the house rule. And just an idea I was thinking of while I was thinking about this whole topic. Sure, it's easy to kind of house rule a one-shot kill into something like Lamentations of the Flame Princess. You say, okay, you make it a critical hit. You roll a 20, you roll to confirm the armor class again, which, really new school, but the idea is that makes 5% of all hits be critical, as opposed to 5% of all die rolls. Made a video about that a long time ago. It doesn't make as much sense. And then, hey, maybe you got to make a death save. Maybe that guy rolls a 20, confirms the armor class, and he shoots you with an arrow, but you fail your death save and you die. I kind of like that. Maybe I'll put that in. But I'm not sure if a player would like that. But anyhow, a bit of a ramble, but I want to correct that egregious math there and talk a little bit more about this because it's really fascinating. I think game design generally is very fascinating, but it's also like, what genre are you trying to emulate? For me, playing this game now, I kind of like the idea of kind of keeping it compressed in this middle level area and emulate more about who are these characters. Maybe they get a little bit better over time, but have them just be more of themselves. It's more about the characters and what they're doing than chasing the level progression. What about you? What do you think about all that?